a $100 million deal, a billionaire investor, and a charismatic tech genius on the verge of changing the world. The champagne is poured, the contracts are on the table, and a single signature is about to seal the biggest deal of Arthur Blackwood's career. But as he reaches for his pen, a waitress, a woman nobody knows, leans in. She's supposed to offer more water. Instead, she whispers 5 words that stop the billionaire's heart and expose a conspiracy years in the making. That's a fake document. This isn't a movie script. This is the story of how one woman's shattered past gave her the power to see the one lie a room full of experts missed. The Obsidian Room was not a restaurant. It was a fortress of quiet ambition. Perched 61 floors above Manhattan, it had no sign, no public listing, and no walk-in policy. Its existence was a rumor whispered among the 0.01%. The walls were paneled in ebonized oak, absorbing sound so completely that the clink of a fork on a plate felt like a small sacrilege. The lighting was an art form, sculpting shadows that made every table a private island. The patrons here didn't just have money, they had lineage. They moved markets, toppled governments, and on this particular Tuesday evening, one of them was preparing to buy the future. His name was Arthur Blackwood. At 72, Blackwood was a relic of a bygone era, and he knew it. His hair was the color of old silver, brushed back from a face carved from granite. He wore a bespoke Savile Row suit that cost more than the average car, but he wore it like armor, not adornment. He was old money finance, a man who had built an empire on dividends, tangible assets, and ironclad handshakes. And he hated technology. He hated the flimsy, vaporous valuations based on clicks and user engagement. He hated the arrogant, sandal-wearing children who claimed to be a new breed of titan. Yet, here he was, waiting for one. His personal security, a silent Israeli man named Kobe, stood sentinel by the doorway, indistinguishable from the decor until you saw his eyes. They never stopped moving. Blackwood nursed a glass of Macallan 50. The $100 million wasn't the issue. It was the principle. He was betting on a ghost, a piece of code, and it made his skin crawl. Across the room, adjusting a silver water pitcher, was Elena Sanchez. To the patrons of the Obsidian Room, Elena was part of the seamless, silent service, efficient, discreet, and invisible. She wore the standard uniform, a crisp black bistro apron over a white shirt, her dark hair pulled into a severe bun. She was 29, but the exhaustion around her eyes made her look older. But Elena was not just a waitress. She was a ghost of a different kind. She saw things others missed. She knew that the couple at table 3, the Hendersons, were on the verge of a divorce. He'd stopped ordering her favorite wine 3 weeks ago. She knew the hedge fund manager at table 7 was secretly liquidating assets. He'd switched from celebratory champagne to nervous vodka martinis, straight up. Her mind was a steel trap, a fortress of data. It was a mind trained, honed, and then broken. 4 years ago, Elena Sanchez had been the rising star at Kroll, the world's premier forensic accounting firm. She could trace a single dollar through 1,000 shell corporations, find digital fingerprints on a wiped server, and spot a forgery from a grainy photograph. She was a bloodhound, until she flew too close to the sun, until a case involving a tech startup named Vance Innovations blew up in her face. Evidence she'd certified as genuine was proven to be a fabrication. She was accused of planting it. She was disgraced, her license revoked, her mentor in ruins. The man she was investigating, a charismatic prodigy, had walked away without a scratch. Now she served him. Not him, not yet. But men like him, men who exuded the same cologne of unearned confidence and silicon-thin charisma. Tonight, she was assigned to the most exclusive table, Arthur Blackwood's private alcove. She'd served him before. He was precise, polite, and tipped 50% in cash. He was also, she noted, uncharacteristically tense. His hand drummed a silent, anxious rhythm on the table. At 7:03 p.m., the heavy oak doors of the Obsidian Room opened. He didn't walk in. He arrived. Julian Vance was everything Arthur Blackwood was not. He was 32, wearing a collarless Italian wool shirt, designer sneakers that cost more than Elena's rent, and a smile that seemed to have its own independent power source. He radiated energy, a humming, electric crackle of disruption. "Arthur, a pleasure, a true pleasure," Vance said, his voice a smooth, practiced baritone. He didn't offer a handshake. He moved in for a half embrace, a gesture of familiar intimacy that Blackwood stiffly endured. "Mr. Vance," Blackwood rumbled, gesturing to the seat. "You're prompt." "The future doesn't wait, Arthur. Why should we?" Vance settled in, his eyes darting around, cataloguing the room, the security, and, for a fraction of a second, Elena. She met his gaze. He dismissed her instantly, another piece of the furniture. Elena felt a cold, familiar dread settle in her stomach. She hadn't recognized his face from the news 4 years ago. He looked different, sleeker. But the name on the reservation, J. Vance. It couldn't be. She poured the sparkling water. Her hand was perfectly steady. "So," Vance said, leaning forward, his smile widening, "let's talk about Project Chimera. Let's talk about how we're going to change the world." Elena retreated to the shadows of the service station, but she never stopped listening. She watched the two men, the titan of the old world and the prophet of the new, begin the dance. And she knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that only one of them was a predator. The other was just prey. The pitch was a masterpiece. Julian Vance didn't just present a product, he delivered a sermon. He spoke of a new digital gospel, a world free from the inefficiencies of human error. "Project Chimera," he explained, his hands moving in fluid, mesmerizing gestures, "isn't just an algorithm, Arthur. It's a sentient financial model. We've moved beyond predictive analytics. We're in the realm of prescient analytics. It doesn't guess the market. It understands it. It reads the global mood, the political substrata, the fractional shifts in consumer sentiment before a human analyst even knows they're drinking their morning coffee." He slid a tablet across the table. The interface was beautiful, a glowing, three-dimensional constellation of data points. "These aren't back tests," Vance said, his voice dropping to a confidential hush. "This is live feed data from the last 6 months. We ran a shadow fund. While the S&P 500 was fighting for a 4% gain, Chimera generated a 112% return, net." Blackwood remained impassive. His face was stone. "I've seen impressive decks, Mr. Vance. My analysts have seen this one. They called it optimistic. My lawyers called it hypothetical. I call it fantasy." Vance laughed. It was a warm, disarming sound. "Of course, and they're right, based on today's rules. But Chimera doesn't play by today's rules. This is why the $100 million isn't just an investment, Arthur. It's an acquisition. I'm not looking for a partner. I'm looking for a guardian. You don't put a system this powerful on the open market. You don't let it fall into the hands of the Chinese, the Russians, or frankly our own government. You put it in a vault. You, Arthur, are that vault. This technology, under the Blackwood umbrella, becomes a stabilizing force. In anyone else's hands, it's a weapon of mass disruption." It was brilliant. He wasn't just selling high returns, he was selling control. He was flattering Blackwood's ego, his legacy, his desire to be a pillar of the old guard. Elena, refilling water glasses with practiced invisibility, felt the pull of it herself. Vance's words were a gravitational force, bending reality around them. He was a master storyteller. "The money," Blackwood said, steepling his fingers, "is contingent on two things. One, the independent verification of the code's integrity. My people are at your facility as we speak. I expect a call within the hour. They'll be ecstatic." Vance smiled, not a flicker of doubt. "And two," Blackwood continued, his voice hardening, "the paper. The final, binding, irrevocable transfer of all intellectual property, free and clear. And most importantly, the regulatory approvals. My team noted your SEC letter of no objection and the USPTO final patent grants. They found no flags, but I fly nowhere without a parachute. I want the originals, the certified wet ink originals. Here, tonight." This was the moment. The air crackled. Kobe, the bodyguard, shifted his weight almost imperceptibly. Vance's smile didn't waver. He reached down to a sleek, black carbon fiber briefcase. He clicked it open and produced a thick, leather-bound portfolio. "Arthur," Vance said, his voice overflowing with sincerity, "I wouldn't have it any other way." He slid the portfolio across the polished mahogany. It moved with a rich, expensive whisper. Blackwood opened it. Inside, nestled in custom-cut foam, were two heavily bonded documents. They looked important, official, immutable. One bore the embossed eagle of the United States Patent and Trademark Office, the other the seal of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Elena was tableside, her task to clear the bread plates. Her path took her directly behind Blackwood, giving her a perfect, upside-down view of the documents as he lifted the cover sheet. Her blood turned to ice. She didn't see the complex patent language. She didn't see the SEC jargon. She saw only two things, two tiny details in a sea of text. At the bottom of the SEC letter was a signature. Robert Harrington, Director, Division of Corporate Finance. And in the bottom right corner, a notary block. Sullivan & Croft LLP, James P. Sullivan, Notary Public, County of New York. Elena's breath hitched. It was a tiny sound, lost in the room's hum, but she felt it tear from her chest. It was the same firm. Not just the same firm, but the same notary. The man who had supposedly certified the faked emails in her case. The notary whose existence Sullivan & Croft later claimed was a clerical error, that he'd been fired for unrelated misconduct 2 weeks before her case imploded, effectively invalidating the very evidence that would have cleared her. Her heart wasn't just beating, it was hammering. She looked at the signature of Robert Harrington. It was strong, clear, authoritative. She had stared at Robert Harrington's real signature for 3 days straight during an audit of a different firm. She had memorized its loops, its pressure points, the exact angle of the T-cross. This was not it. It was close. It was a brilliant, museum-quality forgery. But it was wrong. The terminal stroke of the N was too sharp. Harrington's was always soft, a slight trailing off. This was a fake. She looked at Vance. He was leaning back, the picture of calm, sipping his water. He had done it again. The same method, the same audacity, using a phantom law firm and a forged regulatory signature to provide the final, unimpeachable layer of legitimacy. Blackwood was nodding slowly. He was satisfied. The paper, the physical proof, was what his old-world mind needed. The digital was fantasy. The embossed seal was real. "My lawyers will give these a final review in the morning," Blackwood said. "But they gave me the preliminary sign-off based on the scans." "Of course," Vance said. a mere formality. Blackwood closed the portfolio. He placed his hand on it. He looked up, not at Vance, but at Kobe. Kobe gave a single, curt nod. The call had come through. The tech team was satisfied. "Well then, Mr. Vance," Blackwood said, a rare, thin smile touching his lips. He reached inside his jacket for the custom Mont Blanc pen he used to sign treaties and close eras. "I believe we have a deal." Elena watched the pen move. The cap was off. The nib, a gleaming sliver of gold, hovered over the signature page of the $100 million wire transfer instruction. This was it, the moment of her choice. She could stay invisible. She could let it happen. She could walk away, keep her job, and watch the man who ruined her life become a king. Or she could light the match. The Obsidian Room dissolved. The soft lighting, the distant murmur of the city, the weight of the silver tray in her hand, it all evaporated, replaced by the humming, fluorescent glare of a 40th floor office in Midtown 4 years ago. Elena Sanchez, 25 years old, was at the top of her game. She was the youngest senior analyst at Kroll, and she was David Miller's protégé. David was a legend. A man who lived on black coffee and highlighters. He could smell fraud like other people smelled rain. He was the one who taught her the first rule. The data never lies, Elena, but the people presenting it always do. Don't look at the numbers. Look at the spaces between the numbers. And David had a new case. Vance Innovations. A small, scrappy startup raising its Series B funding. The lead investor, a mid-sized pension fund, had a sudden cold sweat. "It's all just too good," David had told her, pointing at a projection. "Their user acquisition costs are near zero. Their burn rate is pennies. But their revenue projections look like a rocket launch. It doesn't add up." Elena dove in. For 3 weeks, she slept in the office. She traced the code, she traced the bank transfers, she traced the supply chain, and she found it. Vance Innovations wasn't a tech company. It was a phantom. The revenue was a circular loop of wire transfers, originating from an offshore shell in the Caymans, passing through 3 other entities, and landing back in their own bank account, disguised as client payments. The revolutionary code was a pirated open-source platform with a fancy new interface. The smoking gun was a set of internal emails Elena's team had forensically recovered from a wiped server. In them, Julian Vance himself gave the explicit instructions for the wire loop. It was over. "We need this certified," David had said, his eyes gleaming with the thrill of the hunt. "I want it notarized, ironclad. We can't let this snake slip away." He sent the recovered emails to their trusted outside counsel for verification and notary, Sullivan and Croft LLP, a venerable white shoe firm. The certified documents came back the next day, signed and sealed by one James P. Sullivan. David and Elena filed their report. The pension fund sued. The case went to the DA, and then the world fell apart. Vance's lawyers, a high-priced, vicious team from a different firm, filed a motion to dismiss. Their claim, the core evidence was a fabrication. Sullivan and Croft, LLP, their motion stated, has no record of this certification. Furthermore, James P. Sullivan was terminated from our firm 2 weeks prior to the date on this notary stamp for gross misconduct. It was a lie. Elena knew it was a lie. But Sullivan and Croft's partners, fearing a massive lawsuit, corroborated the story. They threw James P. Sullivan, a man Elena now suspected never even existed, under the bus. The DA's case collapsed. The judge, furious, turned on Kroll, who had faked this evidence. Vance countersued. He played the victim, the brilliant innovator almost destroyed by a reckless, malicious investigation. The media ate it up. Kroll needed a scapegoat. David Miller, as partner in charge, took the fall. He was fired, disgraced, and hit with a civil suit from Vance that wiped out his savings, his home, his reputation. But they weren't done. They came for Elena, too. As the lead analyst, she was complicit. She was brought before the review board. She insisted the data was real, but the official, notarized chain of custody was broken. She was painted as a reckless, ambitious rookie who faked evidence to impress her boss. Her license was suspended indefinitely. She was blackballed. David Miller, 58 years old, a man who had been the gold standard of integrity for 3 decades, had a heart attack 6 months later. His wife called Elena weeping. The doctors called it stress-induced cardiomyopathy. Elena called it murder. Julian Vance, meanwhile, had settled his victim lawsuit with Kroll's insurers for a rumored $20 million. He had used that seed money to disappear, only to re-emerge 2 years later as the visionary behind a new, much bigger, much slicker venture. Project Chimera. The clink of the Mont Blanc cap being posted onto the back of the pen snapped Elena back to the present. The sound was deafeningly final. Blackwood was smiling. Vance was smiling. Kobe was relaxed. The deal was done. Elena looked at the documents again. The signature. Robert Harringtonson was sharp. The notary. James P. Sullivan. The same ghost. The firm. Sullivan and Croft. The same phantom shield. This wasn't just a scam. It was a sequel, and she was the only person on Earth who had read the first book. All the fear evaporated. The trembling in her legs stopped. The terror of losing her job, of being humiliated, of being wrong. It all vanished, burned away by a sudden, white-hot certainty. It wasn't just rage, it was clarity. She saw David Miller's kind, tired eyes. She saw the for sale sign on his house. She saw the cold, grey text of the disciplinary board's ruling that had ended her life. This was not a billionaire losing $100 million. This was not a con man winning. This was a reckoning. Blackwood's hand, the pen poised, began its downward descent toward the wire transfer agreement. Elena took one step forward. She didn't plan it. She didn't think. She acted. She was holding the silver water pitcher. With a movement that was both clumsy and precise, her hand spasmed. A single silver arc of ice-cold water flew from the spout. It did not hit the documents. It did not hit the billionaire. It hit the back of Arthur Blackwood's hand. Gah! Blackwood recoiled, his arm jerking back. The pen flew from his grasp, skittering across the table and landing on the plush carpet. A splash of water, no more than a tablespoon, puddled on the mahogany, inches from the leather portfolio. Silence. Julian Vance's smile froze, cracking like thin ice. Kobe, the bodyguard, had his hand inside his jacket in a microsecond, his eyes locked on Elena. Arthur Blackwood stared at his wet hand, then at Elena, his expression not angry, but utterly, dangerously blank. I am so terribly sorry, Mr. Blackwood, Elena stammered, her voice shaking, but her eyes holding his. She rushed forward with a linen napkin. It slipped. My apologies. She leaned in, her body shielding her face from Vance. Her hands, ostensibly cleaning the tiny puddle, were trembling. She was close now, so close she could smell the expensive wool of Blackwood's suit and the faint, citrus scent of his aftershave. He was about to dismiss her, to have her fired, to have her thrown out. She had 1 second. She leaned closer to his ear, her voice a ghost of a whisper, a single thread of sound in the acoustic deadness of the room. Mr. Blackwood, she breathed, her lips barely moving. Forgive me. My name is Elena Sanchez. I used to be a forensic analyst at Kroll. She kept wiping the water, her eyes down. Don't sign, she whispered. That's a fake document. The silence that followed her whisper was absolute. It was a pressurized void, a vacuum that sucked all the air and warmth from the private alcove. Blackwood did not move. He didn't even blink. The only part of him that seemed alive were his eyes, which were fixed on the dark, polished grain of the table. The back of his hand was still damp. Vance, sensing the sudden, inexplicable shift in temperature, forced a light chuckle. "Well, a little excitement. No harm done. Let me get that," he said, reaching for the pen on the floor. "Stay seated," Blackwood commanded. The words were not loud, but they landed with the weight of stone. Vance's hand froze, hovering over the carpet. He slowly, very slowly, retracted it, his smile fading into a mask of polite confusion. Kobe retrieved the pen, wiped it, and placed it on the table. He did not return to the wall. He stood 3 feet behind Blackwood's chair, his posture relaxed, his hands clasped. He was now a wall of muscle between Blackwood and the room. Blackwood turned his head, just slightly, toward Elena. She was still holding the damp napkin, her knuckles white. "You have 10 seconds, Blackwood said, his voice a low rumble. "Start with why I shouldn't have Kobe remove you from this building right now." Elena straightened up. The waitress was gone. The analyst was back. "Because you are about to transfer $100 million to the man who pioneered the Vance Innovations shell game scam 4 years ago," she said, her voice clear and steady, though it cost her everything. "And you're about to do it based on a forged SEC letter and a phantom notary." Julian Vance exploded. "This is insane! Arthur, what is this? You're letting the help interrupt our business? Get her out of here." He motioned angrily to Kobe. "This is outrageous." "Be quiet," Blackwood said, not even looking at him. His gaze was locked on Elena. It was an unnerving, predatory focus, the look of a hawk assessing a mouse to see if it might, in fact, be a snake. "Prove it," Blackwood said. Elena took a breath. "The portfolio. May I?" Blackwood nodded once. She stepped forward. Vance started to rise. "I am not letting her touch my proprietary documents." "She won't," Blackwood said. He opened the leather portfolio himself. "Point." Eleanor's finger hovered over the glassine cover of the SEC document. "Commissioner Robert Harrington. The signature is a forgery. It's a high-resolution digital copy of his public signature, but it's flawed. The pressure is too uniform. The terminal N in Harrington is too sharp. He has a trailing signature. It gets softer. This was made by a machine, not a hand." That's absurd," Vance stammered, but a tiny bead of sweat had appeared on his temple. "Our lawyers at Sullivan and Croft—" "Let her finish," Blackwood interrupted. "That's the second forgery," Elena said, her confidence growing. She pointed to the notary block. "Sullivan and Croft, LLP. Notary, James P. Sullivan. James P. Sullivan is a ghost. He was the same notary used in the Vance Innovations fraud. When Kroll's investigators, my team, presented his notarization as evidence, Sullivan and Croft claimed he had been fired for misconduct, and the stamp was invalid. They created a cutout to invalidate any evidence against them, and they're using him again." She looked directly at Vance. "You got sloppy, Julian. You used the same ghost twice." Vance's charismatic mask dissolved. Underneath was something cold and reptilian. "You," he breathed, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and fury. "I know you. The analyst. The one who got disbarred. Elena Sanchez. My God, you're a waitress." He barked a laugh, a sharp, ugly sound. "Arthur, this is pathetic. This is a disgruntled, disgraced analyst with a personal vendetta. She tried to frame me 4 years ago, and now she's trying it again because she's pouring my water. Are you going to listen to her, or to your own multi-million-dollar due diligence team?" It was a good question, a logical one. Blackwood sat back, He looked from Vance's furious, indignant face to Elena's pale, rigid one. He was at a crossroads. On one side, a $100 million deal, vetted by his team, built on the promise of the future. On the other, the desperate, impossible whisper of a waitress. But Arthur Blackwood hadn't built an empire on trust. He had built it on instinct. And his instinct, honed over 50 years of navigating shark-infested waters, was screaming. "You say you worked at Kroll," Blackwood said to Elena. "Who was your mentor?" "David Miller," Elena said, her voice catching for the first time. "Partner in charge of forensic investigation. He taught me to look at the spaces between the numbers." Blackwood's expression changed. It was a fractional shift, a flicker in his grey eyes. "David Miller. I knew him. He did an audit for me back in '98. An honest man. A rare thing." He paused. "He passed, didn't he?" "His heart gave out," Elena said, her jaw tight, "after Mr. Vance destroyed him." That was it. The tipping point. Blackwood slowly, deliberately, put the cap back on his Mont Blanc pen. The click was the loudest sound Elena had ever heard. He placed the pen back in his breast pocket. "Julian," he said, his voice calm, "this meeting is over." "Arthur, be reasonable," Vance sputtered, standing up. "You're going to let this child, this failure, blow up $100 million deal based on a hunch?" "She's not hunching," Blackwood said. "She's testifying." He looked at Elena. "The paper stock, what's wrong with it?" Elena ran her thumb over the edge of the document. "It's too good. It's a 110-gram, bright white, premium bond. It feels important, but all official SEC correspondence is on 90-gram, recycled, off-white federal bond. It's cheaper. This is stationery store paper." Vance's face was ashen. He had been so focused on the digital forgery, the perfect logo, the flawless signature, that he had missed the feel of the lie. "Kobe," Blackwood said. The bodyguard stepped forward. "Mr. Vance is leaving," Blackwood said. "See him to the elevator. His briefcase remains here." "You can't do this!" Vance shrieked, his voice finally breaking into a desperate, shrill panic. "Those are my private property. You can't just steal!" He lunged. He wasn't lunging for Blackwood. He wasn't lunging for Kobe. He was lunging for the portfolio, to destroy the evidence. He never had a chance. Kobe moved with a speed that was terrifying. He didn't punch Vance. He didn't tackle him. He simply intercepted him. A full-body block that met Vance in midair and used his own momentum to slam him back into his chair. The chair cracked and splintered, sending Vance sprawling to the floor in a heap of designer wool and broken mahogany. Vance lay on the floor, gasping. The wind knocked out of him. The charismatic prophet was gone, replaced by a common, desperate thug. Blackwood watched him, his face a mask of profound disgust. He pulled out his phone. He did not dial 911. He had a different number on speed dial. "Mark," he said into the phone. "It's Arthur. I'm at the Obsidian. I need you here, now. And I need you to bring your friends from the Southern District, the ones who owe me a favor. Yes, it's Project Chimera. It's not just a scam, Mark. It's the whole damn thing. And I have the smoking gun." He hung up. He looked down at Julian Vance, who was struggling to his knees. "You're ruined, Arthur." Vance spat, his face purple. "I'll tell everyone. I'll tell the Journal. You'll do nothing," Blackwood said. "You're a ghost, Julian, just like your notary." He then turned his full attention back to Elena, who stood frozen, the linen napkin still clutched in her hand. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a paralyzing tremor behind. "Ms. Sanchez," Arthur Blackwood said, his voice quiet. "Would you be so kind as to fetch me a fresh glass of water? And then, you and I are going to have a very long talk." The 20 minutes that followed were the longest of Elena's life. Kobe had lifted Julian Vance from the wreckage of the chair with one hand, relieved him of his phone and wallet, and deposited him on a bench in the service corridor, where he now sat under the watchful eye of the restaurant's stoic head of security. The bubble of the Obsidian Room was unbroken. The other patrons, hidden in their own alcoves, continued to murmur about dividends and divorces, oblivious to the $100 million explosion that had just been quietly diffused. Elena returned with the water, her hands steady this time. The dining room was empty, save for her, Blackwood, and Kobe, who stood by the door. The portfolio of fake documents lay open on the table, an obscene testament to Vance's audacity. Blackwood sipped his water. He didn't speak. He just watched her. Elena had faced down hostile lawyers and federal auditors, but this silent, calculating gaze was more unnerving than any cross-examination. "You lost your license," he stated. It wasn't a question. "Yes, Mr. Blackwood. Suspended indefinitely by the disciplinary board." "You were accused of fabricating evidence." "Yes. The same evidence that Mr. Vance's team is now claiming is private property in your hallway." "And David Miller," Blackwood said, his voice softening just a fraction. "He was a good man." "You said Vance destroyed him." "Vance bankrupted him," Elena said, her voice low and tight. "He countersued David, personally. The legal fees, the settlement, it wiped him out. The board revoked his license too. He lost his house. 6 months later, his heart just stopped. He was 58. Blackwood nodded slowly, absorbing the information. He stared into his glass. Some men build, others just break, and they get rich doing it. He looked up, and the coldness was back. "This was not a coincidence, Miss Sanchez. You, here. Him, here. On this night. I don't believe in coincidence. I don't know what to say, sir. I've worked here for almost 2 years. I was assigned your table. I recognized the name on the reservation, but I didn't recognize his face until he walked in." "But you recognized his work," Blackwood pressed. "Yes. Instantly. The forgery. It was his signature. The same methods, the same arrogance, using a phantom law firm. It's his playbook." Blackwood tapped the portfolio. "My team. My very expensive team. My lawyers at Credit Suisse. My analysts. They all vetted the digital copies of these. They all said it was clean. Why did they miss it and you didn't?" "Because they were looking at the deal," Elena said. "They were checking boxes. Does the patent number match the filing? Yes. Does the SEC letter reference the correct offering? Yes. They were verifying the data. They weren't verifying the source." She pointed at the paper. "They would never think to check the paper stock from a PDF scan. They would never question a signature that's 99% perfect. And they've never heard of James P. Sullivan. Why would they? His entire purpose is to not exist. I'm the only person in the world who had a reason to remember that name. I'm the only one who lost everything because of it." Blackwood was silent for a long time. The only sound was the distant wail of a siren rising from the city streets far below. Finally, he spoke. "You didn't save me $100 million tonight, Miss Sanchez." Elena's stomach dropped. Was this a trick? Was he— "Sir, I don't understand." "I knew it was a scam." Elena blinked. "What?" "Not all of it," Blackwood admitted, swirling the water in his glass. "But I knew Project Chimera was vapor. My tech team, the one Kobe got the call from, they weren't just vetting the code. They were a Trojan horse. They've been inside his servers for 48 hours. The shadow fund he's so proud of. It's a simulation. The live data is a 3-month-old loop." "Then why?" Elena was completely lost. "Why this performance? Why the money? Why let him get this far? Blackwood's face darkened, and for the first time, Elena saw something beneath the granite. She saw a deep, profound, and aching grief. "Because of my son," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "My son, Thomas. He was soft, like his mother. He had my name, but not my nature. He wanted to build, but he didn't know how to fight. He was an angel investor. He believed in the future. He believed in people like Julian Vance." He took a sharp breath. 6 years ago, before Vance Innovations, there was another company. Ethereum Dynamics, a smaller con. 10, maybe 15 million. Thomas put his entire trust fund into it, his entire inheritance. And Vance, he took it all. He bled him dry and left him with nothing but debts and shame. Thomas, he couldn't bear the humiliation. He couldn't bear facing me. He drove his car off the Tappan Zee Bridge. They called it an accident. I called it what it was. Elena felt the air leave her lungs. This wasn't a business deal. It was a vendetta. "I've been hunting Vance for 6 years," Blackwood continued, his voice thick with a cold, controlled fury. "But he's clever. He uses cutouts, digital ghosts. The money vanishes. This time, Project Chimera. I knew it was him. I felt it. I put out the word that I was looking for a legacy tech investment. I baited the trap. He took it. But," and he looked at Elena, his eyes sharp as glass, "I had a problem. My digital evidence was obtained illegally. My Trojan horse, it's inadmissible. The DA, Mark, the one I just called, he told me I needed parallel construction. I needed physical, undeniable proof that Vance was committing fraud, obtained without the digital evidence. I needed him to overplay his hand. He tapped the forged document. I knew he would have to fake the regulatory approvals, but I never imagined he would be so bold as to bring physical copies. I thought I'd have to catch him in a lie about the contents. I was prepared for a legal fight. I was not prepared for this." He leaned in. "I didn't know how to prove the documents were fake. My team would have taken them, analyzed them for a week, and come back with a probably. By then he'd be gone. You provided the how," Blackwood said. "You identified the specific, actionable flaws, the notary, the paper, the signature. You didn't just expose the lie. You gave my lawyers the bullets for the gun. You turned my illegal suspicion into admissible, physical fact. You didn't save me from a con, Ms. Sanchez," Blackwood said, a chilling smile touching his lips. "You saved my sting. You saved my son's legacy. You gave me the man who murdered my boy." The door opened. 2 men in dark, impeccably tailored suits walked in, followed by a woman with a federal agent's badge on her belt. This was not the NYPD. This was the Southern District of New York. This was the FBI. "Arthur," said the lead man. "Mark?" "Mark," Blackwood nodded. "He's in the hall. And this," he gestured to the portfolio, "is the nail for his coffin. But first, I need you to take a statement from my new head of forensic analysis." He looked at Elena. "Ms. Sanchez, I believe your suspension is about to be reviewed." The next hour was a blur. The Obsidian Room, a sanctuary of quiet power, transformed into a surgical theatre. The patrons were, with apologies, informed that the private elevator was having technical issues and were routed through a service exit, none the wiser. The FBI agents, led by a sharp-eyed woman named Agent Thorne, were professionals. They were quiet, precise, and deferred to Blackwood in a way that spoke to his immense, invisible influence. Julian Vance was brought back into the room. The change was grotesque. The charismatic visionary was gone, replaced by a pale, trembling man who seemed to have physically shrunk. His expensive shirt was wrinkled, his eyes darting like a cornered animal. I want my lawyer, he kept repeating, his voice a hoarse squeak. You'll have one, Agent Thorne said, her voice devoid of emotion. Right now, we're just securing the evidence. Elena, sitting at the table, gave her statement. She did not waver. She laid out the facts with the cold, sterile precision of the analyst she was. The document, purporting to be a letter of no objection, is a forgery. 1. The signature of SEC Director Robert Harrington is a high-resolution digital replication, identifiable by the uniform pressure and the sharp terminal stroke on the N, inconsistent with all known wet ink exemplars. 2. The paper stock is a 110-gram bright white premium bond, inconsistent with the 90-gram off-white federal bond used by the SEC. 3. The notary stamp of James P. Sullivan from Sullivan & Croft, LLP, is a known fraudulent instrument previously used by Mr. Vance in the 2021 Vance Innovations fraud to fabricate a chain of custody. As she spoke, Vance's head sank into his hands. He knew. It wasn't just the lie. It was the specificity of the lie's discovery. He had been beaten at his own game. And, Elena added, I recognized him. He is Julian Vance, the architect of the Vance Innovations fraud, which resulted in the financial ruin and subsequent death of my superior, David Miller, and the fraudulent acquisition of over $20 million. It's a vendetta, Vance shrieked, lunging forward, only to be restrained by Kobe. She's lying. She's obsessed with me. Are you? Agent Thorne asked, turning her sharp gaze to Elena. Elena met her eyes. I am. I'm obsessed with the truth. And the truth is, he's a predator who uses charm as a weapon and paper as a mask. The evidence is on the table. Blackwood, who had been watching from the sidelines, finally spoke. Agent Thorne, my team at Blackwood Capital has also, independently, discovered that the Project Chimera codebase is a shell. My full report, along with the server data my team legally acquired as part of their due diligence, he gave a slight, meaningful look, will be on your desk in the morning. I believe you'll find it corroborates Ms. Sanchez's analysis. He didn't just fake the approval, he faked the product. It was a masterstroke. Blackwood was using Elena's physical evidence as the front door to submit his own, more damning digital evidence. The fruit of the poisonous tree was suddenly, legally, delicious. Thorne nodded. She understood perfectly. Mr. Vance, she said, you are being detained on suspicion of wire fraud, securities fraud, and forgery. You have the right to remain silent. As two agents cuffed him, Vance made one last, desperate play. He looked at Blackwood, his face a mask of pleading. Arthur, wait. Think about this. The press, the scandal, your reputation, your shareholders. This will be a circus. We can make this go away. No money has changed hands. No harm, no foul, right? We just walk away. I'll disappear. I'll give you back. I'll give you Thomas's money. I still have it. I can get it. It was the worst thing he could have possibly said. Blackwood walked over to him until they were inches apart. The room was so quiet, Elena could hear the hum of the wine fridge. You will never, Blackwood whispered, his voice vibrating with a primal hatred. Say his name again. He stared into Vance's eyes for a full 10 seconds. Then he straightened his suit. Take him away, he said to the agents. Vance was marched out, a ghost finally captured. The room was quiet again. The agents bagged the portfolio, the broken chair, even the glasses. Mark, the DA, clapped Blackwood on the shoulder. It's done, Arthur. It's finally done. We'll get him. For Thomas, and for Mr. Miller. Blackwood just nodded, his face etched in exhaustion. Soon they were all gone. It was just Blackwood and Elena, standing in the wreckage of the night. The table was scarred from the spilled water, the carpet littered with shards of wood. Elena suddenly remembered where she was. She was an employee. She had spilled water on a guest, interrupted a meeting, and her shift wasn't even over. "Mr. Blackwood," she began, her voice small. I should go clean this up. Blackwood raised his hand. "Stop." He walked to the small writing desk in the corner. He took out a checkbook. Not a standard one, but a large, leather-bound book from his private bank. He uncapped his Mont Blanc pen. He wrote for a moment, tore out the check, and folded it. He held it out to her. "For David Miller's widow, and for you. A new start." Elena looked at the folded check. She could guess the number of zeros. Enough to buy a house, a new life, enough to never have to wear an apron again. She did not take it. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, "I appreciate the gesture. More than you know. But I can't accept it." Blackwood raised an eyebrow. "Don't be a fool. This isn't a reward. It's a reparation. For what he cost you." "What he cost me was my name," Elena said, standing straighter. "And my purpose. Money can't buy that back." Blackwood studied her, a long, appraising look, a slow smile, the first genuine one Elena had ever seen from him, spread across his face. "No," he said. "You're right. It can't." He tore the check in half, then in quarters. He dropped the pieces into his empty water glass. "In that case," he said, "I have a different offer. My head of internal audits is retiring. He's a decent man, but he's a box checker. He never would have seen the paper. He never would have remembered the ghost." He locked his eyes on hers. "The job is yours. I'm starting a new division, forensic and strategic risk. You will report directly to me. Your first task will be to work with the DA to get your license reinstated. Your second will be to tear Julian Vance's entire digital life apart, piece by piece, until there is nothing left but dust. I want to know every dollar he ever stole and every person he ever hurt." He held out his hand. "You will not be a waitress, Miss Sanchez. You will be a hunter. Your salary will be significant, but your purpose will be absolute. Protect the house and hunt the wolves." Elena looked at his outstretched hand, the hand that had been poised to sign away $100 million, the hand of a grieving father who had just captured his son's killer. She thought of David Miller. She thought of 4 years of shame, of pouring wine for men who wouldn't meet her eyes. She thought of the cold, sharp thrill she felt when she saw the flaw in the forgery. She was not a waitress. She was a bloodhound, and she had just been unleashed. She took his hand. Her grip was firm. "When do I start?" "You just did," Blackwood replied. "Go get your coat. Kobe will take you home. Be at my office at 7 a.m. Elena walked out of the Obsidian Room. She didn't go to the staff locker. She simply untied the black bistro apron, folded it neatly, and left it on the service station. The manager, a perpetually stressed man named Francois, stared at her, speechless, as she walked past him toward the front entrance. Kobe was holding the private elevator. "Miss Sanchez." The ride down was silent. When the doors opened to the marble lobby, Kobe didn't lead her to a taxi. He led her to a black, armored Mercedes Maybach waiting at the curb. He opened the back door for her. "Home, Miss Sanchez?" the driver asked. Elena gave him her address in Queens, a small walk-up she shared with 2 other roommates. It felt like speaking a foreign language. The car moved silently through the city. She watched the lights of Manhattan blur past, but she wasn't seeing them. She was seeing data streams, wire transfers, and the smug, terrified face of Julian Vance. She felt a profound, bone-deep exhaustion, followed by a surging electric current of life. She was, for the first time in 4 years, awake. She arrived at her apartment at 2 a.m. Her roommates were asleep. The tiny living room was cluttered with shoes and takeout boxes. She went to her room, closed the door, and sat on her bed. She didn't sleep. At 5 a.m. she showered. At 5:30 a.m. she put on the one interview suit she still owned. A simple, black, two-piece suit that was 4 years out of style but immaculately clean. At 6 a.m. she was on the subway, heading back to Manhattan. At 6:45 a.m. she stood in the cavernous black marble lobby of Blackwood Tower. At 6:50 a.m. the head of security, expecting her, handed her a temporary ID badge. "Welcome, Ms. Sanchez." At 6:59 a.m. she stepped out of the private elevator onto the 62nd floor. The 61st floor, the Obsidian Room, had been dark, cloistered, designed to hide. The 62nd floor was the opposite. It was a cathedral of glass and light. The entire floor was Arthur Blackwood's private office, offering a 360-degree, god-like view of the rising sun hitting the city. Blackwood was already there, not in a suit, but in a crisp shirt and trousers, standing before a floor-to-ceiling window, holding a cup of coffee. "You're early," he said, not turning. "So are you," Elena replied. He turned, a flicker of approval in his eyes. "Coffee? Please." "Black." He poured it himself. The DA's office called. They held Vance overnight. No bail. "With your testimony and my server data, they're convening a grand jury this afternoon. They are also filing a formal request with the disciplinary board for the immediate review and reinstatement of your license, based on new evidence of a criminal conspiracy against you." "And David Miller's," Elena said, her voice firm. "And David Miller's," Blackwood agreed. "His name will be cleared, posthumously. His widow will be the primary beneficiary of the victim's restitution fund. I'll make sure of it." "Thank you, Mr. Blackwood." "Don't thank me," he said, handing her the mug. "This is just business. Ugly business." He gestured to a large, immaculate glass desk. On it was a single thin laptop and a stack of files. "That's your station. The files are the unredacted police reports and my private investigator's reports on the Ethereum Dynamics fraud. The one that involved my son." He walked back to the window, looking down at the city below. "I want you to start there," he said. "I want you to learn every move he made, every lie he told, every ghost he created. And then, I want you to go through every single investment in my portfolio, every partner, every startup, every deal. You are no longer just an accountant, Ms. Sanchez. You are my eyes. You will look at the spaces between the numbers." Elena set her coffee down. She opened the first file. The name Thomas Blackwood was on the cover. "Julian Vance," Blackwood said, his back still to her, "was a symptom. The world is full of them. Charismatic, brilliant, empty men who think building something and stealing something are the same. They are the rot in the foundation." He turned to look at her, the morning sun silhouetting him, turning him into an imposing, dark figure. "Your job," he said, "is to find the rot. Welcome to Blackwood Capital, Ms. Sanchez. I hope you're not afraid of the dark." Elena looked up from the file, her eyes, once clouded with exhaustion and defeat, now sharp and clear. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, "I've been living in the dark for 4 years. It's the liars who should be afraid of me. In a world where experts and algorithms failed, it was a single person, armed with nothing but her own painful past, who saw the truth. Elena Sanchez didn't just get her job back, she got her name back. And she found a new purpose, ensuring that the predators who hide in plain sight are brought into the light. The $100 million scam was just the beginning. This story is a powerful reminder that sometimes the most overlooked person in the room is the most dangerous one to the people with secrets. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. We spend weeks researching and scripting these real-life dramas, and your support means the world. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that justice can come from the most unexpected places. And most importantly, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another story of heroes, villains, and the incredible twists of real life. Thank you for watching.